America the Beautiful is beautiful, obviously, like its name. Um, I'm just wondering, how do you both decide or step into the next project? Because each one is such an undertaking. What makes you set your cap to something of this scale?
Ah, okay.
Are you asking
Well,
us about our next one or what made us interested in doing this one?
we were super excited to be invited to do America the Beautiful by National Geographic, actually, because we'd worked on big sort of global series like Planet Earth or Frozen Planet before. But actually, the opportunity to work on America was really exciting for us because it's like you've got the whole planet in one continent. You've got every habitat from the poles to the jungles, and you've got really diverse animals. And we felt there were real challenges for us because you've got epic, everything in America is bigger. So the mountains are bigger, the canyons are bigger, the weather's
Weather's bigger. Yeah.
so for a filmmaker, there was a really high bar as well because you have fantastic A-list Hollywood animals that have been filmed and photographed a lot. So we had to kind of bring our A game to that and show you aspects of them that you've never seen before, like mountain lions in the Grand Canyon. So there were there's lots of opportunity here for us as filmmakers, but also lots of challenges. So we were thrilled to be invited to work on it.
Mm.
Awesome. I mean, speaking of having A-list animals, which I love how you put that, but also really unexpected sides. How
Yes.
much research goes into the before of like, we have to find them doing these things, and then how much is really a surprise in the moment? Mark, if you want to start.
Good question. Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, it's a blend. But on this particular series, there was a massive amount of early research because we were so terrified of showing Americans things that they'd already seen, and so they would think it was boring. So we had a sort of two rules. One is if it's familiar, it's got to be doing something different.
Mm.
And we have to have lots of stuff that's unfamiliar too. So, for example, if we've got bears, they've got to be kind of swimming in swamps, holding their cubs in their mouths with gators all around them. Or, if it's mountain lions, they've got to be somewhere amazing like the Grand Canyon. But we wanted all the little quirky, caterpillars changing color and, oak-toed frogs stealing ants from sundew plants and all the little quirky things. Some of the quirky things we got at the beginning. I mean, we found the stories at the beginning. We found those stories by talking to all the amazing scientists and amateur naturalists and everything that they have in North America. Some of them you kind of happen upon during the 2 or 3 years it takes to shoot one of these series, because as I'm sure you can imagine, these series take a long time to shoot because with wildlife, what you really have to do to increase your luck is to have lots of time. That's our big thing. Most movies have huge crews for short periods of time.
Right.
We have tiny crews for very long periods of time just to make our own luck, basically. That's what you need with wildlife. You just need to be there.
I think one of our unscripted things, unplanned sequences that actually opens the whole series is the squirrel interaction with the bear. So we didn't know that happened. No one knew it happened. We weren't expected to start the whole series with a squirrel story. But it was so remarkable because we were using remote cameras to try and capture this story so that all the animals will show us their sort of secret side. And sure enough, out came this thing that could have been scripted by Disney animation,
Right.
where you see a squirrel taking on a bear that's 100 times its size, and you just see this incredible character coming out of this squirrel that no one would have ever expected, and it's all real, it's all captured in camera. And the way we got it was the cameras actually were triggered by the animals, and then so it's multiple angles on this tree, effectively, with all the pine cones stored at the bottom.
They're all filming themselves, exactly.
They're all filming themselves. So it's a true. We think it's a really Disney sequence,
Yeah.
but it's all captured for real by the animals.
That's so fascinating. I love that. And so you not only have all these like hidden cameras, but also like jet fighter cameras.
Exactly.
So there's like first off just a wide range to capture all of the natural diversity, but how did you know to take a chance on such a process that is kind of like a first time that we're seeing it done?
Do you mean the jet photography specifically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's really interesting because Vanessa and I brought the sort of aerial technique to planet Earth all of those years ago.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you remember on that, but we filmed animal behavior from the air for the first time.
Mhm.
And so we've always been very keen on using aerials to kind of ring the changes. But what we really wanted to do on North America was to find a new way to show the landscape, because the landscape and the weather are so important in shaping the animals and shaping the wildlife. We thought, right, how are we going to transform the filming of the landscape? And this technology had been used before in Top Gun, and of course now Top Gun 2, if you've seen, that's great.
Yes.
And we sort of thought, well, actually, it's never been used on natural history before. And the guys we've been working with at VSpeed were just fantastic to work with, and we managed to come up with a really good system of pre-visualizing shots on the computer. So we would work together to design these shots and then go and fly them. So you sort of kind of could redesign the shots beautifully, and you knew what you were going to get, and then they would just go and fly them. The other piece of incredible luck we had filming with those was, because of the pandemic, lots of the national parks were closed and had no people in them. So we were actually allowed to fly through the national parks, which you're not normally able to do.
Right.
So many of the shots that you see in this series, we would never ordinarily be able to get, and we probably will never be able to redo unless there's another pandemic.
We hope not.
Yeah.
So they really are once in a lifetime opportunities, these shots. But it's an amazing view, I think, of the landscape, because it gives you such a sense of overview. You can travel so far and you can see the transition between the different habitats and how the landscape works. But you can still be close to it. You know, normally you might see that kind of thing from a satellite, but it's not very engaging. It's so far away. Whereas a landscape, you know, we've got shots that travel 100 miles or more in a single shot.
So
you know,
crazy.
you need 10 or 12 seconds, you know, so it's exciting and also really revealing. It shows you how the landscape works, and it shows you a lot about the habitats, we think.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, when I was reading about it, obviously learning about who all is behind the project, it's so interesting to me that you guys were working with Indigenous tribes to capture footage, because that seems obvious. Like, America is made up so much of the Indigenous people that were first here, and yet it's something that probably would not have happened very often before.
Yes.
So can you talk about that collaboration, Vanessa, and what it means to get to incorporate them?
I think right from the early days, we contacted people who lived, I mean, often the people in many continents that live in truly wild places are the Indigenous peoples, and they're often the guardians of that wildlife and have the access, and they really understand their wildlife. So we were already talking to them for the research, and also to gain permits to go and film in some of the special places, like where we filmed grizzlies hunting caribou. So they were part of that process. And then as we went through the show, we realized that we needed this show where we represented some of the amazing work that those people are doing to protect their wildlife, like in episode 6, Bernadette of the Gwich'in, which is my favorite story, who, you know, this single woman fighting to preserve her own homeland, her special homelands, and really affecting policy at governmental level is really inspiring. So we featured those stories, and also the recovery and rewilding of bison into the American Prairie Reserve.
Actually, the Chippewa Cree, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Chippewa Cree, which is, you know, a wonderfully inspiring story. So that was one element. And then actually also in the soundtrack, we said, you know, the music that comes out of America is so much born of the place and the natural sounds of the place. And we wanted their incredible contribution to be represented in the soundtrack too. So Joe Trapanese, our composer, collaborated with Navajo composers and performers, and we had an incredible ethnically diverse choir from LA called Tonality, Southern performers and artists. So I really hope you feel that you can feel the soundtrack is sort of more than the sum of all those different influences, which is really what America is.
Yes, I love that. I mean, you mentioned before, like, it has like all the continents in one, which is something that I hadn't even really thought about until going through these episodes, where I'm like, wow, You're really seeing all the habitats.
Yeah.
Um, but also the other thing that's really clear when watching this is how much conservation is the goal. Like you're being inspired by people who are doing their part to conserve.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice, each of you, to viewers who want to help and don't know where they should begin?
Good question. I mean, I think one of the messages from the final show is that everyone can play a part, and you know, it could be sort of helping to chart the migration routes of whales. That, you know, it could be lots of small things, but everyone doing something builds to something really important. And it's, you know, everyone can play a role, can't they? It's just
Yeah, I think that's what we were amazed by, is that in every region, in every community, there were people doing stuff. So just sort of getting onto social media, you will find what is happening in your community, and those projects really do make a difference. So we could have filled a whole series with the stories that we just put in that final show. There's so much to join in with.
I love that. So then finally, what is your next 2 to 3 year investment? Where are you looking to explore next?
Well, I've been asked whether we would like to make another continent series, and we were saying actually we'd love to do one in South America, bring all the techniques we've been using in North America to South America, but we need to wait for Disney to offer us that, but hopefully they will.
I think they should. South America the beautiful. Peru, you know, shout out to my homeland. Peru has all the things also.
There you go.
It's just smaller. Well, thank you both so much. The series is beautiful, and I cannot wait for everyone to watch it and hopefully start doing their part as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.